So I get asked the question quite a lot about, how much is a CRM project going to cost? And it's a difficult one to answer because there are a lot of different costs that need to be considered in relation to a CRM project. So in terms of today's video, what I'm looking to do is sort of break that down a bit and talk about the different cost types, just to give you a bit of a flavour as to what's potentially involved. So I guess probably the most obvious cost is going to be software. That's the most visible, and I guess we're in a sort of era these days where on cloud-based solutions the cost is very visible. It's normally expressed as a sort of per user per month cost, and you've got a little bit of complexity around the fact that software providers have a wide range of different editions, versions. So you've got your sort of base level, you've got your professional, your enterprise, your ultimate. So a little bit of a complexity about thinking that through. But software costs are the thing that most people are aware of. Now there are a sort of genre of software costs that people don't necessarily spot, because you may well need add-on software to facilitate what you're trying to do in a CRM project. So maybe you're trying to integrate perhaps to a finance system from your CRM, so you might need some third-party software to facilitate that integration. Or maybe there's a gap in the functionality of your base CRM software and you want to buy a third-party app to plug into your system. So there can actually often be some quite considerable third-party costs above and beyond the cost of your CRM software itself. That's the side of things that people are most aware of. Then the area to consider is implementation services. So you've got your software, you need to implement it. And sometimes people don't appreciate this cost, and it's often the biggest cost of a CRM project, because the day rates of consultants can be anything, probably going to be north of £750 a day, up to 1,000, over 1,000 in many cases. So it doesn't take many days for that cost to start to scale up. Now, the current generation of CRM software products, they're quite flexible, and you don't need to be a developer in order to set them up, but you do need to spend time learning them and working out how to do things. So it is possible to set them up without necessarily using an implementer. That being said, over the years I've seen many CRM systems that people set up themselves that really just don't work the way they work, and wasted a lot of time and been through a lot of pain with a system that isn't set up to support what they do well. You need to consider, though, if what you're trying to do in terms of your implementation is more technically challenging, perhaps you're looking to integrate into another system, you need to do custom development or scripting, maybe it's complex data migration. These are areas you're going to potentially need help from a system implementer or system integrator. So that can be a dimension that can be quite expensive and just needs to be considered. And you also need to think about implementation costs, not just in terms of an implementer you might bring in, but you may have costs from existing or other suppliers that you need to take into account. So in our example earlier of integration of the finance system, your supplier of the finance system may well need to be involved in that integration, and they're likely to want to charge for it. So you've got costs from them in terms of the implementation as well. So perhaps the other area needs to be considered is the cost of running a CRM project, because it can be quite time consuming for those in the organisation that are involved. Requirements need to be defined. We need to sort of manage and schedule the project. We might need to set up training, etc. So there can be a lot of internal time involved. Now, it might be that you contract in additional resource. It's quite common for people to contract in a CRM project manager, for example. But there can be a lot of cost in terms of opportunity cost as people are moved away from their day job to focus on the CRM project. So you've got an opportunity cost that you might need to consider, because it's amazing how time consuming CRM projects can be for internal resources. The other area to consider is the impact on your users. Now, if they're using a system, they're going to need to be trained on it. So when they're trained, they're away from the business, they're not productive. It may well take them considerable time to get up to speed. They might have to do things within the system, input data, for example. So actually, as users first adopt a system, there can be quite a significant impact on their productivity. And again, that's something just to be aware of. Now, once you're live, there's things to consider like, support contracts. So typically you're going to have a third party that is there to support your system if you have, any issues. Be able to sort of contact them and for them to resolve them. So that will be an ongoing support cost. And then you've got ongoing time internally to run a system, whether that's, system administration or data administration or internal support of the system, or training new staff as they join. These are all opportunity costs, or if you're contracting in other people to do that, they're going to be direct costs as well. And one thing to be aware of is, there are often quite a lot of hidden charges around running software that you're not immediately aware of. So perhaps over time your storage costs increase, for example. And the other thing to consider is that, a system is rarely static over time. You might deploy it in a phased way, in which case you've got the ongoing costs of the additional phases. You may need to change the system to adapt to new requirements and changing needs. And again, you're going to have all the costs of developing and changing and training people on that system. Now, I'm quite aware that's quite a menu of costs, but we also need to factor in that there's a cost to not doing a project. There's a cost of not having good, strong systems. So all of these have got to be balanced in that respect as well. Now, in terms of what's the system going to cost you as an organisation, that's really going to vary from organisation to organisation, size of organisation, the scope and complexity of the project, how much you're going to take on yourself, how you're going to phase it, generally going to be, and generally how you approach it. So individual costs will vary very significantly. Interestingly, there are ways of deploying systems quite cost effectively, and I'm going to do a separate video on that, just some of the things you can do to make it as cost effective as possible to get a CRM system up and running fast. Anyway, that's my breakdown of CRM costs. Hopefully that's helpful, and I'll look forward to catching up with you in the next video. Thank you.